All right, we're ready?
Yes.
Okay, we are just about live. All right, I believe we are live. So welcome everybody to today's Empowered Women's Coaching Call. It is Tuesday, the 13th of August. I have one of our favorites back with me today, Dr. Nima, and a topic that is probably going to be hot on everyone's list, which is relationships. Probably the most challenging and rewarding and most frustrating and most highs and lows area of our lives. Am I right?
Well, I'll tell you what relationship I never seem to have a problem with. And why can't all of my relationships be like this one?
Comparing women to dogs.
That's not what I'm doing. I'm just talking about relationships. But
Yeah.
isn't it funny? Isn't it funny? Well, first and foremost, I want to preface this by saying I'm a chiropractor. I'm not a relationship coach at all. I just got into, if you haven't seen me before, I'm not here claiming that I have the secret to successful relationships, that I have, like, I've done amazing in mine. I've been through a divorce, many relationship failures. What I wanted to share was that we're talking about this in the context of healing. And as a healer, which I know the principles of healing very well, I've been studying them for 18 years. And it seems that every single patient that has been coming to see me was dealing with a stress-related problem that was linked to some sort of a breakdown in relationships. Mm-hmm. So whether it's just recent or years ago, the symptoms that you're coming up with, if I were to ask my patients, when did they start 3 years ago? What was going on in your life? Well, me and my husband became, separated around that time, or me and my son, my children stopped speaking to me, and then these symptoms came up. So it was like, wow, if I just go upstream and not only continue to study all of the things that I was studying to help in my recovery from my relationship failures and challenges, then maybe if I can teach people a little bit about what I just learned in my recoveries of my discovery and my own personal interests with a neuroscience background and tying it all together in the realm of healing, then maybe we can actually help a human being heal. Mm-hmm. And then if we can help them heal, which healing basically means integration. And so you cannot leave out how you show up in relationships in your healing journey.
And I actually think this is probably the place that we can get the most lessons. It's the place that is our biggest teacher, really. And I think so many women, especially, I'm going to speak for women, obviously I can't speak for men, but especially, and I can relate to this in my early years, I feel like I've only just grown through this recently. I'm 37 now, but when I look past all my previous relationships, there was so much pressure placed on the relationship to fulfill what I wasn't fulfilling for myself. I was relying on the relationship for love because I didn't love myself. There was that neediness and that stress and pressure. And
no one can relate to you at all, I'm sure. Nobody can relate at all.
Well, and the most freeing thing that I can say, and the greatest gift that has come through, one of the most challenging breakups of my life, over the past year, is that now that I can finally love all parts of myself, I no longer need someone else for that. And it is the most incredible space to be in. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about this. But what I've realized was I was in so much judgment on myself. I judged myself in so many ways, which I'm sure all women can relate to as I'm saying this. But what that does is it makes our partners, our kids, and our families feel like we're also judging them. Because if we're judging these parts of ourselves, it means that we're judging them. So there's that extra strain and pressure. And the other big lesson, and I finally really got this, Nima, I know you've tried to help me with it for a while, but I was away on a course a couple of weeks ago, and I really realized that the things that I have been consistently triggered by in past relationships and continue to be triggered by in them, I really can see now that it's such a reflection of the things that I weren't owning about myself, the things that pissed me off about myself. And it's like another level of release and freedom, because now I can almost see those things, and rather than be triggered, I can laugh and I can feel free in that, because I realize I do those things too, and I just needed to own those parts of myself.
And this is it. This is what we go through life thinking that, we're perfect until we get into relationships. And it's like all of the things that we, first of all, didn't know that we didn't know has now in our faces. So now we're forced to navigate ourselves, our self-identity, through the interactions, energetic interactions between us and somebody else. And when I say energetic interaction, I mean it. There's a neurobiology of we. Okay, so when I come into, why is this so important, is because when I come into a relationship with somebody, you guys can sense it. There's a sense, there's a facial expression, there's a nonverbal communication, there's the tone of voice, there's all the physical expression. That gives us all of these information, energetic information that we take in and process, and all of a sudden our brains make meaning out of it. And if we've had past childhood trauma, which most of us have had, whether it be separation trauma or whether it be kind of physical trauma, sexual trauma, then the nervous system that we grow up with, that the developing child grows up with, starts to become alerted in a fight or flight state. And we get into these attachment type of scenarios where we become confused, and it's not a cognitive process. It's happening within our bodies. And if we don't start to study this stuff and make this an area of exploration and turning within, then what happens is we, as you just said, we then use relationships to fill what's missing inside. We then say, okay, I have all this trauma, I have all these stories about myself, and I'm going to meet the perfect person who will then finally make me whole. And we all know how that works, doesn't? And usually we have to go through these breakdowns. That's when people usually reach out to me, is when they're... The
biggest challenge as well, just for the women listening, is that for men, when they're in love with a woman, they really put a lot of pressure on themselves to make them happy. Like, that's what they want. They want to see us happy. And so the pressure that places on a man that your happiness isn't coming from within and that you're needing them to fulfill that, that's not sustainable for a man over a lifetime, right? If you're not working on yourself and filling yourself up, that's where a lot of the breakdowns in a relationship
Totally. We have it in our way, you have it in your way. And it all comes back to core wounding. And so the man often will have the experience, like myself, where you had a mother who was going through challenging times, who wasn't attuned to you, and you're consistently doing everything you can to make her happy. But then if she's not attuned to herself and she's not attuned to you, nothing you do will ever be enough. So as a man, my experience of it is, well, I have to make a woman happy, and also that familiar experience of, well, it doesn't seem to be anything I do is enough. So then I get into a relationship with a woman, like I did when I got married 10 years ago. And it was like, okay, so I work hard, I produce, I struggle to get out there and then provide this amazing life. And then that should be enough to make her happy. And then there is that old wound again of me not being able to make the feminine happy. And it was like, I can't make her happy. Well, then it must not be the one. And boom, I left.
Mm-hmm. And that's where then give up, right? Once they get to a point of like,
I can't win. Yeah. So if you've ever heard your husband say, I can't win, right in the comment section, right in the comment section, I can't win with you. If you've ever heard your husband or your partner, I don't know how many men are watching, I'm not sure, but I'm sure the men are like, oh, fuck, like, I can't win with this woman. And it's true, because you can't, you cannot win, because if she is in a space and hasn't done the specifics, we're going to talk about what specific steps. And so by the end of this, here's what's going to happen. I want you to stay on, because we're going to talk about the specific steps that you can take. And I'm going to offer a free online workshop on Saturday for anybody who really wants to dig in deeper and go deeper into this. It's all about becoming trigger proof, not trigger less, but becoming responsible for your triggers, as you have learned like a boss over the last year. Like, there's a huge shift in you, and we continue to kind of do the work together and talk. And now both of us are in this similar situation where now we're single, and now we're navigating the dating world with new conscious eyes. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, because this is all kind of fitting together. But if you are a man, like if your husband is in that situation where he's consistently saying, I can't win, then he's trying to fulfill his core wounds of abandonment or feeling not worthy because he wasn't able to pick his mother's moods up. And then now he's experiencing the same things as an opportunity. This trigger that you're triggering in him, same way he's triggering in you, is an opportunity. Either it's an opportunity, or you're basically living in a fantasy that you're going to have this wonderful person be fully resourced, fully matured, and is able to take care of your needs. It's not going to happen. The main goal, what I want you to get out of this, the goal is to have relationships be a spiritual practice of co-regulation. Now imagine this, that you're aware of your wounds and you've done the work to heal and repair them to the best of your ability. And as it's an ongoing process, you're able to see them as they come up. So you're able to recognize them as they come up. So you can separate yourself from your reactivity. And your partner doing the exact same thing. Okay, now it's not necessary, but this is what I'm creating in my life. And I know that you're doing the same thing in yours, Kira, is that you have a partner who's also committed to knowing what their triggers are, knowing exactly what their core wounds are, doing the necessary work to resource themselves so that they're not expecting other people to do it. And when they drop the ball and find themselves expecting other people to do it, to have the communication skills and commitment to co-regulate one another. That is what I perceive to be the future of conscious relationships, is this thing called co-regulating your attachment voids. Mm-hmm. And we can all do this if we commit to putting into the work. Now, the key is that out of two, you might say, my husband doesn't want to do this. Okay, that's cool. Fair enough. You're still responsible for stepping it up for yourself. And here's how to change the dynamic in a relationship. When you commit to doing the work and you shift, two things are going to happen. A rising tide lifts all boats. So either your partner, when they take on this work, what I'm going to share with you what to do, they either will be like, holy shit, like, what are you taking? I want some of that as well. And I want to feel that same fulfillment. I'm so amazed by your changes. I want to commit to feeling the same freedom that you do. You're inspiring me. Mm-hmm. So that's going to happen naturally, which is what we see that happens in our clients. Or the other thing that's going to happen, which is you're going to do the work, you're going to expand, and all of a sudden you just realize that it might not be the right fit anymore. And this is how this whole concept of relationship limbo, should I stay, should I go? You're at this point where I don't know if this is going to work, and I'm scared, I don't know what to do. Should I jump? I'm going to leave my partner, I'm just going to leave. Slow down. Don't do that yet without doing these specific.
And I would also just want to put another, alert there is, you can't go to your partner after listening to this or listening to one or two things or doing some work and you have to, you know, one of the things that I've really learned and taken responsibility for, and one of the things that's in my mission statement every day that I read, is to remind myself that I challenge my partner only through challenging myself. It's your responsibility to grow yourself and to focus on you and to fill yourself up. It is not your, you know, you can't go around telling others what they need to do.
What we're doing when we do that, Kira, is we're saying, listen, these things that you're bringing up are hurting me. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to take responsibility for soothing myself. Yeah. So it's your job to help me grow up.
Yeah. Because you get to change, you get to choose your emotional state. And when you're fully resourced, nothing that someone else will do can make you feel anything. You get to
when you're fully resourced. Yeah. Now, this is the key component, is how do we get there? How do we get ourselves to the point where we can then see relationship as a spiritual practice of something that we're using to deepen in our own commitment to ourselves, an ability to look in the mirror and say, I love you. Like, you can't do that alone. You need to co-regulate. We need others to help us to get to that point. And it's going to be through the breakdowns. So the top ways of making your relationship a spiritual practice, number one is to use your triggers as a window. Rather than a wound that we try to run away from, which is our default, because we dissociate, we get into this wound and then we kind of shut down. Mm-hmm. I'm going to encourage you, you're going to say, it's a decision, and that's just kind of a decision. Today, and I want you to write in the comment section if this is resonating with you, if this is what you want to, depending on the game of life that you want to play, because we're here to create magical experiences in life, to the experience of being alive. And that can only happen through relationships. And it can't happen if we have unrealistic expectations in relationships. So the way you overcome that is by making a declaration. I made a declaration to myself. Rather than trying to find the perfect person, I am going to use every relationship, not just a romantic one or whatever, but I'm going to use every relationship as a spiritual practice, and every trigger is a window to go back into myself, to reparent the parts of me that I felt are still wounded.
And that's what relationships are for. They're there for our conscious evolution, right? That's exactly what relationships are there for. Unfortunately, most of us are going in unconscious and coming out unconscious.
Fantasy. We're going in for fantasy, and it's all based on neurochemicals of dopamine. I mean, I just started dating recently after taking a pause so that I can do this, kind of like you. We're on the same boat, and I'm on a path of creating a badass relationship. And I'm consistently, in every moment of interaction that I can awaken to, I can look at myself and go, where am I checking in? Am I overly addicted to this person's approval, or am I just running away from a trigger? And I've noticed now with what I'm about to share, I'm now able to stay put when I get triggered. Instead, before it's like, I'm out of here. You're challenging, I'm out of here. This time I've changed a step in the dance, and I'm able to sit still and now use every trigger and every breakdown and conflict as a access point to reconnection. So that's the first thing that I want you to say, that I want you to write down, that is to commit to using your triggers and breakdowns as an access point to reconnection. That's a tall order for us, isn't it? But when you get this part right, what happens is you're not afraid of conflict. You're not running away from conflict. You're not running away from arguments. You're not hiding who you are, because you can now take off the mask and speak your truth and know that if there's a conflict that happens or that person runs away, you can take care of you. So it opens the door to finally, in my life, having authentic relationships with people. Okay? But when you don't get that part right, and you don't commit to this, what happens is you're unconscious, you get triggered, and then you go back into your wound and then expect the other person to fix you. And that doesn't ever work out. So my question to you is this. If you can, number one, full stop at the beginning, decide and commit to yourself that you're going to use your triggers and conflict as a way, as a portal to reconnecting first with you and then with the other person. What possibly opens up for you in your relationship, and what then makes it possible for your kids? I'm curious.
Someone's put in the comments here, easier said than done. And this is true. But what I have learned is that over time and with practice, because I was at a point in my own personal journey and love or lack of love for myself that I could barely tolerate myself anymore, let alone being in a fulfilling relationship where I was, bringing happiness.
Responsible for somebody else. Yeah.
Exactly, right? And so out of that, I was the desire that something had to change. I had to make a shift. And yes, you're never going to perfect this. I'm sure, Nima, you can admit as much as I can that there are times where I'm still triggered by the stuff that I know are my triggers, right?
Totally. Now, this is why, here's the thing. This is why we call it a practice.
Yeah.
Okay? This is practice. So if I was to go and, it's the person that said easier said than done, okay, this is what I would say. Okay, let's play golf. And here's what happens. You take a driver and you smack it down and put it on the fairway. And then you take an iron and then you kind of hit it very calmly with a nice arc and put it right onto the green. And then you want to put maybe two, maybe one putts if you can, and get it in the hole. Easier said than done, Nima. True. I absolutely agree. Easier said than done. That was very easy the way that I said it, but it's a practice. And here's the thing. I know it's not easy, but the alternative to this practice is, pardon my French, fucking unbearable.
Unbearable. And the wins make it more exciting. Like once you start having some wins, you get addicted to the game.
It's kind of like, oh my God, did you see that drive? I'm using the golf as a reference because it's a practice. It's a difficult practice, just like relationships. It's like, oh my God, I just hit it down the fairway, high five. It makes it all worthwhile. And then the very next hole, I shank the ball off into the bushes. There I go again. And it's a practice. What do? I get back on and I swing again. That is a relationship. Be willing to call it a spiritual practice of loving yourself. Because here's what happens. When you have the breakdown, here's why it's so painful. And I'll tell you, this is the underlying thing of it. When you have a breakdown, kind of like you had in your relationship, and it was, boom, there was a separation, gone, I'm out of here. What happened was little Kira started doing jabs with herself. This is Dr. Russell Kennedy, my good friend, mentor, and kind of co-pilot in our program when we work with people, is you judge yourself, you abandon yourself, you blame, and you shame yourself. And the only reason why the relationships have become painful for me is because when the breakdowns happen, I turn around and I start beating on myself, my younger self, and I start abandoning myself. I start saying, there you are, you're never going to get it right. You're not good enough. No one's going to ever love you. You're going to be alone all your life. And all of these thoughts and these emotions start to come up. And it's like, I have now joined in the bullying towards myself. And so that's why it's so painful. And the practice of relationships is designed by nature for love, which is pleasure and pain. So experiencing the pain of it and still going in and being able to love myself through that is the hallmark of all, is the end goal, holy grail of the relationship. So that's available when you commit to using your triggers as a spiritual practice. So what opens up for you when you make that a practice? Okay. Number 2, which lends to understanding your triggers. What do we do? Well, you got to become trigger proof. Now, we talked about that. That was our first kind of call.
Go back on our YouTube channel and
I keep going into that. I have a show that's every Thursday morning in Australia early. Wednesdays in North America and the rest of the world, is these triggers that come up in your relationship as patterns are windows to healing yourself. So you must go back and clear your past resentments, your past victimhood stories towards your mother and father, because that's what this spiritual practice is. Anything unresolved within you and your parents gets magnified by your relationship. And if you don't get that right, guess what? It's going to be downloaded onto the kids. So these old narratives and these old stories, which were totally unconscious to me, became consciously aware when I went through my breakdown and I took on this work of becoming trigger proof. And I was like, oh, okay. So it comes from that separation trauma when I was 2 years old, this resistance to my mother throughout the whole time. And we got to go back there and heal that. And so what I did was I moved in with my mother and father because I was so committed to that. My relationship with them has completely transformed because I have taken and owned everything that I see in them. I've taken and seen the benefits of all of the things that I thought that they shouldn't have done. And it completely changed. And so when you reached out to me and I said, guess what we're going to do? We're going to go back and heal some shit with your mom. It's not always like party. You're like, oh, great. I don't really want to deal with that. That's usually your biggest obstacle is, I don't really want to go back there. However, your connection with your primary caregivers and the stories you have about them and the traumas that you have are pretty much
siblings as well. I had a big one with siblings too.
Exactly. They will completely destroy your ability to have a relationship. This reminds me of one of our clients who came in a relationship limbo, didn't know what she wanted, was sick and tired of it being stuck in the same thing. She jumped in and we started working through it. And her first session, her overview experience session, was about her brother, which was extremely abusive. He used to beat the crap out of her every single day, and they didn't have a relationship. And so the way that showed up was she didn't feel safe in relationships with men, resentment, and of course she had father stuff going on, so we were working on that. But we went back and we used these magical tools to resource that little girl, that inner child. We turned that story around so she saw where her superpowers came from, and she opened her heart and tearfully, it was actually in this office, was able to love her brother for the first time. And she had a very strained relationship, hadn't spoken to him for like 5 years. And that day went and called him, and completely, he's been waiting because she was punishing him for what he did when he was like 11. And now she's like in her late 30s and still punishing him. And how would you like it if I punished you by judging you based on the shit that you did when you were like 12 or 15 even, or even 20 or even 25 or even 30 for me, for God's sakes. So she really, by opening her heart to her brother, she was then able to open her heart to herself. By opening her heart and clearing her past resentment to her father, she was then able to open her heart towards herself. So this becomes critical to use relationships and the conflicts within them as a spiritual practice. If you're willing to choose to accept it. That's the tough part about it.
Yeah. It always feels like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so much hard work, but it's harder to not do the work.
It's harder. This is the key. You might think that, okay, maybe I can just kind of let this go, but the alternative to doing this work is unbearable. And here's the other crazy part. If I run a business and I know that I suck at accounting, which I do, I can always hire someone and delegate the accounting to someone else. But the problem is, in a relationship, our weaknesses that we have, we cannot delegate to another person. We are responsible for upping our game, upgrading ourselves for our weaknesses. And you might be thinking, well, what about so-and-so? He's got to do the work. And what about him doing the work? Well, part of your spiritual development is letting go of the attachment of having somebody else do their own healing work so that you don't have to be confronted with shit.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Real love is no expectations, right?
That's your next, if you're finding yourself saying, yeah, but my husband, because he's not on this call, I'm listening, yeah, but so-and-so, consider the possibility that on your spiritual evolution, your next step is to remove the attachment that someone else must do their healing work so that their triggers don't confront you.
And that's pretty much how every argument doesn't resolve, is you're constantly pointing the finger, yeah, but you, yeah, but you, yeah, but you. Like, and nothing moves forward if you want to continue to stay in that place. And actually, this has just reminded me of something, Nima, that you might want to touch on as you're going through this. Literally this morning, I've had 3 messages from women who are in make or break moments in their relationship. And I am no expert, so I find it a little bit overwhelming because I don't want to be giving advice in a place that it's not
perfect.
However, what I do know is we can only take responsibility for ourselves and do the work ourselves, and to stop being needy as women, stop chasing, stop begging, and actually just stop and focus on filling ourselves up is really the only way to salvage, anything, is to do our work.
100%. And for those people who are in that situation, I just messaged you a little registration link right there for Saturday. I think it is at... I think it'll be like around 10 a.m. New South Wales time on Saturday morning. So it says on the registration, and this is a Zoom call workshop. I'm going to be coming to Australia soon. We have 5 spots left now for in October 18th to 20th. And for those people who really are feeling kind of like they're at their make or break point in their relationship, as you said, that you're not giving them relationship advice, but they actually want to dive in. On this workshop this weekend, I'm going to show you exactly the steps, the what and the why, the steps to getting from that limbo state, what I call transitional anxiety, to feeling powerfully aligned and on purpose, so that you can confidently make that next move. And this is not just in a relationship.
And without fear, no matter the outcome, like what you were talking before, is either you'll rise together or you'll be okay.
Totally. Exactly. But you have to let go. But here's the problem. The miserable that you're living is familiar. It's familiar. So you know what you're expecting. But to make that move to either go all in with you or all out, like all in with the relationship or all out, it's scary because you are going into the unknown. The answer always is to upgrade yourself and go all in with you. And so as you upgrade, you are good either way. Kind of like what everybody when this is what you said. I'd like for you to share. I mean, when you came in, you're like, I need to save my marriage. I need to save my marriage. And this is what I said. I said, whoa, Kira, my job is not to save your marriage. I mean, my job is to help you go inside and get Kira to the point where it doesn't fucking matter either way.
And I have to say, my biggest, throughout my relationship, I always thought everything in life would be okay because we'll always be together. That was my story. And so when we were faced with it not working out, I was so focused on that dream and that story and that expectation that, to me, my greatest fear was not to have that, because that's what I was relying on for my comfort and my safety. And if I could share the greatest lessons and gifts of it not working out, is I'm so much more flexible as a person. I'm grateful that was a chapter now, and I'm flexible for what the future looks like. I'm not attached to how it has to be or how it should be. And I also learned that it's nowhere near as scary as you think it's going to be. And as you empower yourself, it's actually a lot more exciting and free.
Yeah. I'm a failure is just a story. I'm a failure. Not to encourage people to leave. No. Do not leave without first doing these steps, this work first, because there's an opportunity. If you're in a limbo, I always tell people, you don't have to leave. We can, in this time frame, use these triggers and these problems as a spiritual practice to grow. And so many times we've worked with people where they're on the brink, and then we did the work, and then they got back together, only to, after about a year, to make a confident decision to leave. But it was on the other side of them doing the inner work to heal their past traumas, to regulate their nervous system, to take their triggers as a spiritual practice. But then on the other side of it is like, okay, I now know that I know I really gave it a try, and we're best to uncouple right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it happens on the other side
and
of that.
what I can also take ownership for now and realize, and, you know, whether it would have changed things and what was meant to be or not, I have no attachment over. But I really can take responsibility how I didn't inspire the best outcome through not taking responsibility for my triggers and the way I responded, you know, in the dynamics and, you know, in miscommunication and all of those things. And it just makes me excited for moving forward because, you know, I feel more confident than I ever have in myself. And even, you know, as, you know, we've had some chats about this dating game that we're in and, you know, and it's like, I really don't need to get fulfilled in any way by someone else. There's no neediness anymore. There's no attachment to something working out or not because I feel full on my own, and it's looking for that other to complement rather than to fill a void. And
co-regulation.
Yeah.
You're looking for, so what happens is once you do this, as you're saying it, Kira, and you rise to that, you'll start to attract somebody, whether the person that you're with, like as you know, in your spouse, when you're estranged or your relationship is kind of stuck there, they will rise to where you're at. Or if you're single, kind of like you'll notice that the quality of connections that you'll make now are far more conscious and evolved than they ever have been, because you're now attracting your energetic match. Mm-hmm. Because you've now healed those, you've worked on those wounds, you now know how to resource yourself. The neediness isn't there, so the volatility is not there. You'll still go, relationships will still have ups and downs, but if it doesn't work the way that you want, you're not just completely devastated, you bounce back quicker from the breakdowns. That's the thing. You now see the triggers. You see the relationships. I'll give you an example. There was this woman that I was dating, and everything was going really well. And I just noticed there's a habit that she had, which was to kind of laugh everything off and kind of hide from her emotions by laughing. And so I kind of, you know, we were discussing it, and she kind of follows some of my work. And so she's like, oh my gosh, she's starting to become aware that this is what she does. And to the point where I shared with her something that really happened during a really difficult day. One of my good friends was going through a really difficult situation at home. And then I came and shared that with her, and then she started laughing. And then I just kind of was like, oh, that's interesting. That really hurt to have you laugh at that. And she continually laughing. Now, I could now, because of what the work that I do, I could see that it wasn't intentional. She couldn't control it. She was hiding emotions, and she was living in a fantasy world that she had to just try to avoid all sadness and grief and just try to make things happy. And I said, well, and I knew that her father had passed away several years ago. And I knew that was a button for her. And I was trying to give her an example as to what that disconnect felt like, how it felt to not be seen. I gave an example, and I said, you know what? It's as though if you came to me sharing with me some like bad news about what happened, you know, with your father, and then I kind of laughed it off. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, when I brought that up, she burst into tears and ran outside of the room, and in tears. And my old self would have been like, okay, this is cuckoo. Let's get the hell out of here. Psycho, I'm out of here. And that's my complete old self. And now the new evolved version of me all of a sudden felt that trigger, felt an abandonment when she ran away. I was able to recognize it right away and go, ooh, because I got triggered. I put my hand on my chest and I started to self-soothe. And I started to talk with my, this version of me, my younger self version of me, which we get all of our clients to do, which, by the way, I'm recommending you do this right now. If you want to make your relationships a spiritual practice, it's a connection with your younger self there. I want you to put your picture up there. And so I started connecting with him and telling him all of the things that he needed to hear when he felt abandoned at that age. And soon as I self-resourced, I was able to regulate my trigger, bring myself back into my body. And once I took care of myself, then I was able to turn around and see what that must have been like for her. And then I started to think, oh my gosh, she clearly lives a life where she runs away from her wounds and doesn't address them. So she makes light of everything, so she avoids pain. So the death of her father was extremely painful, and clearly, based on her way of being, she doesn't resolve these things. She doesn't face them head on. She runs away. So when I brought that up, that must have been traumatic for her. When I brought that up, immediately I felt empathy towards her and compassion. I would not have been able to feel that if I was triggered. I would have been the victim to her being crazy. Instead, I was like, wow, I just really did that. And I felt compassion for her little girl. Now, when she came back in eventually, I said, can we talk? And she's like, I said, come and sit down. I'd love to talk about this, right? Because now my goal became, number one, I want to make sure that she feels seen and heard. And I want to make sure that she sees and hears me. Okay. So then what happened was she came back in the room. I said, would you like to sit down? She goes, no, I don't want to. She was still stuck, regressed in her little wound, which is what happens when you get triggered, by the way. If ever you think, my husband's acting like a child, he's like a child. It's true. He's regressed into his 8-year-old when he gets triggered. And so do you. You regress into your 4-year-old maybe. You got to own that. So when she all of a sudden gets into that space, and she starts going, no. And I said, and then I start going into, I completely understand how when I brought up your father, it was like apples and oranges, and that must have hurt tremendously. And she was like, kind of pouting, yeah, that's true. And you can see that when they regress, you become like childlike. That's what happens in relationships. Why? Because we revert back to our old wounds. I knocked her back into her old wound. She knocked me into my wound when she didn't see me, didn't hear me, and ran away. All of my abandonment shit came up, but I was able to quickly self-resource. And then when I went back to her and I said, this is what I completely said, it must have felt so horrible for me to bring up my thing. It must have felt like I was retaliating at you. She goes, yes, exactly. It felt like you were trying to cut me down. I said, I totally feel and see that you would have felt that way. It's just that when you said what you did, it hurt me so much that I brought up an example. I brought up an example so that I could feel seen and heard. I had no intention of hurting you. I didn't know how much healing you'd done on that. Clearly, it's a fresh wound, even though it happened years ago. And bad example. I get a completely bad example, and I just want to let you know that I see that, and I appreciate that. In that moment, you can see the moment that you empathize with somebody else, you have now helped in co-regulating their nervous system. Please write that down. The moment that you have empathize with somebody else and they feel seen by you, whether it's your child, whether it is a partner, regardless of whatever triggers they brought up in you, if you can't regulate yourself, there's no fucking way that you're going to be able to empathize with that other person. The second I empathized with her, you saw her regulate. And in that moment, she was like, I didn't realize that I did that to you.
And now they have the ability to see and hear you. And this is a big one, because I think there's a misinterpretation that when you see and hear someone, it doesn't mean you're making their behavior right or
exactly.
But and that's the challenge, is people go, fuck you did the wrong thing. I'm not going to see you and hear me. You're not seeing and hear me.
I don't want to. And that's your 8-year-old self talking. Yeah. Exactly.
Let us know in the comments. I know I can feel myself when I'm behaving like a child.
I turn 2. I become 2 personally. Yeah. I'm a 2-year-old when that happens.
Really, yeah, I reckon I'm probably more like that 10-year-old, like rebellious.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the key here is that as we do the work and we do it together in community, you're able to see it and laugh at it. And so you'll still get triggered. It doesn't mean trigger less. It means trigger proof. And when you see it and you're able to see it, you're not being it anymore. And
when you see it in your partner, you're able to have empathy and love and therefore be less reactive.
Totally.
most important phrases that spoke to my heart when I was having difficulty in my previous relationship was something Oprah said, and it's, do you hear me? Do you see me? And does what I say mean anything to you? And if you are wanting this desperately from your partner, the biggest advice I could give is to make sure you're doing it for them first, because you can't make them do anything, but what you can do is take responsibility for how you're showing up.
Totally. And so the second that I was able to resource myself and then empathize with her, I literally saw her trigger go down. And I'm like, wow, this shit really works. This empathy stuff that I'd never really understood in my entire life until now. Oh, okay. All of a sudden, boom. And then that was like an amazing connection that happened right after. And usually the great connections happen on the other side of a breakdown, right? And so it went really well after that, let's just say. But what I did was I used my triggers I used the trigger and the breakdown as a access to connection rather than an excuse to say, fuck off, I'm going to go find someone who doesn't challenge me. Number one, so it's a sign of growth. Number two, I healed my own, the second one was to take that time to resource yourself. Okay. And the third one basically is to heal that inner child. So I've been doing the work in healing that little boy version of me, the past resentments and traumas, so that I had access to being able to use the relationship as a spiritual practice of reconnection. And then the fourth thing that you want to do is don't do it alone. You can't, you don't know I didn't know what I didn't know. So to make a study and a practice of this, show up at events, workshops, online forums, which teach you the art and neuroscience of healthy, healing relationships. Because if you don't, nothing else in life is going to work. It destroys your health. It destroys your business, because your whole business model is all relationships. And if you want to level up in your business, you have to become a leader. And leaders are basically visionaries who can show possibility to people who are always scared.
And the more comfortable, I have to say, the more comfortable you become with yourself, the more others feel comfortable in your presence, because they don't feel that judgment. When you're judging yourself, when you're harsh on yourself, people are feeling that energy from you.
Totally. It all comes down to judging self. And so after that, then it's like, okay, I'm taking this on. It's a commitment. It's like I want to create kind of love warriors, and my vision is to create a community of self-healers through self-regulation and co-regulation, because we do need each other in order to regulate ourselves. So it all happens on the other side of taking your relationships and making it a spiritual practice. And that's what I'm going to be diving into on the Saturday. I think I left you a thing in the Zoom.
I popped it in the comments.
Yeah. So I'll get you anybody who's resonating with this conversation and wants to upgrade their intimacy and accelerate their ability to calm themselves down, to regulate themselves, and then to be able to be present for their kids, for their business, for their relationships, for work. This is for them. It's not for those. It's definitely not for those who want to put it on other people to heal their wounds. It's for those who want to take on whatever chaos is going on in your relationship, whatever disconnection. I want to show you the path to victory. And the victory is all about loving self. It's not about fixing the marriage. It's not about ending things, because on the other side of the work, the answer will come. Mm-hmm. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to help you heal what's broken. Because these emotional wounds, kind of like a sprained ankle, if you don't solve that, you can't run upstairs properly. So we go back to those old wounds. Number 2, which is healing your past traumas. That's the most important part of it, because nothing you're going through in your relationship is about what it's about now. Nothing. It's about those old unresolved wounds. So my question to you is this: what patterns are you noticing coming up again and again and again in your most challenged relationship?
Mhm.
What's the feeling? Is it abandonment? Is it betrayal? Is it not enough? Is it guilt and shame? What feeling comes up? I'd love to see in the comment section. Abandonment, betrayal, guilt, shame, rejection, not enough. What keeps coming up? I'd love for you to just take a look at what that is. It could be if you're contending with your kid. Even with your child, this is unresolved stuff. If it's not resolved with your parents, boom, you're going to see it with your kids. And so the people that we work with are really dedicated. The ones who come to our live trainings are truly dedicated to being at cause for their own healing, rather than pointing the finger to someone else. And I see this community. This is what I want to. The people who come to our workshops, like we're doing it in Sydney and Vancouver coming up in a month, this is what I say to them. It's time for you to take that magnifying glass that you use to point fingers at all of the traits that you see in the other person that you can't stand. Time to take that magnifying glass that you love to magnify all the shit, and then take a mirror instead and start looking at you and seeing a reflection and seeing all of those breakdowns, all of those triggers, all of those judgments as an opportunity to go in to do the most important thing of all, is the work to climb to the mountain where you're able to look in a mirror and go, I freaking love that person. To be
And
able
not
to,
only will you feel amazing, but imagine the immediate relief for that other person when you do that.
100%. And to be able to be the type of person that, instead of beating the crap out of yourself whenever you get into triggers and you get into breakdowns, the breakdown happens, you feel yourself beating yourself up, and then you go, no, I'm going to be my own advocate.
Mm-hmm.
Go easy on yourself. Cut yourself some slack, Nima. You're doing amazing. Like, wow, who said that? What happened to my inner critic? So your inner advocate is going to become more profound and stronger than your inner critic on the other side of
And
the story.
I will attest to that. Like, it's rare that I have that inner bitch. Like, we all have that noise,
It's
but
there.
so quiet. It's not in the prominent forefront anymore, and I can tell it where to go pretty quickly. Like, it just,
Exactly.
at all. Yeah.
Rather than before, when it would come up and I would spiral for 3 or 4 days to a week because I didn't have that toughness and resilience. This is about giving you the toughness and resilience and grit to be able to handle if there's negative feedback or criticism coming, that it doesn't send you in a tailspin and you're able to be appreciative of feedback.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I didn't like it. I didn't like hearing criticism and negative feedback. I still, when it comes up, I'm not crazy about it. But now I've become an observer, and I'm like, thank you for the feedback. And the people around me are like, what happened? You're not so reactive. I'm like, I've been doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so important for me as a chiropractor to teach this, because it ties into your health. All of your emotional baggage, your digestive problems, your thyroid issues is all relationship stuff that you've buried because you don't yet know how to resolve those triggers and be fully self-expressed in a way that empathizes with both you and another person. You can share your boundaries in a way that lands with the other person, that doesn't make you or the other person wrong. You can. We just have to go through those steps first, using your triggers as a window to healing and reconnection, clearing your past resentments, healing that inner child, and diving all in with a community and mentorship that'll help you heal that other part of you so that you can have the business, the health, and the relationships that you deserve.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Beautiful. There's so many amazing comments over on the live. So I think this has resonated with everyone because we all have relationships, right?
Cool. I can't see them right now because when I watch the live, it totally distracts me because it's like a few second delay. So I'm deliberately not watching. So I don't see the feed. It's difficult. When I love live audiences because I can see your faces. Mm-hmm. Right now, I don't see anything. So I'm hoping is what I'm saying is landing. Is it landing or not?
No, it definitely is. Everyone's resonating. So just thank you again for your time. So I have popped that link to Saturday in the comments. So you guys can go and find that. I've had so many women reaching out with relationship challenges, I guess, because we've been doing these lives.
would you share that link with those people? Because I would love to. And if anybody, go ahead, if you aren't already, follow me on Instagram at Dr. Nima, and also on Facebook. If you want to message me on Facebook, this is my Facebook page. You can see the video there. My picture looks, it's like this kind of this one here. Right there, that one. If you can go to that one and send me a private message if you have anything specific, or this is one of those do or die, like make or break points, and you can't just wait till October or whatever, and you are actually committed into doing this work and investing time and effort and resources, because it's gonna, break down everything.
I just want to share my testimonial, because I have several different mentors in my life, and I think it's important to have different mentors for different things, and we learn, from everyone in different ways. But I came to you at a time where I was literally facing my greatest fear, and I came to you to save a relationship, and actually the gift that came out of it was really you just helping me save myself. And just your presence in my life at that time has been life-changing. Like, you really just helped me pick myself up and really just see the value in myself at a time that I could have lost that and lost all the work I'd done on myself up until that point. So if any women are facing that, you really did help. I will absolutely attest to you being profound for me in that time.
And got your back always, sister.
Yeah, totally. And you really did. You really did. You really do care about people. It's not about just showing up when you have to. You showed up when you didn't have to. And I really appreciate that.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is the thing about being kind of really connected with the work and risking everything to leave chiropractic and do this full time, is I really do care. So I can't help it. I wish I could shut it off. I'm getting better at shutting it off a little in the middle of the night. How's Kira doing with that? She wasn't doing well last week. Is she checking in? How you doing? What's going on? Like my mind and my life can only limit a certain people that I can care that much about. But it was, otherwise I go into complete chaos, which I totally have. But when we work together and you're in our kind of programs, I am like 100% all in with making sure that you get the outcome. And so it's so great to see how far you come.
And I really feel like I got such a greater outcome than what I even went to you for. Like, for me, it was perfect the way, it was meant to end, and it was meant to be a chapter. And who I've become since, I love myself more than ever. I love my life more than ever. I've never felt so happy and free. And you really.
I love you, Kira. I love you. I see you. I love you. You're amazing. You inspire so many people. The fact that you'll go one day without knowing how awesome you are would probably be a shock to anyone else, but it's a testament to know that you're not alone. We're all in the same boat. We all go through this, so we do need each other. And I got your back, and I'm going to see you through to creating like your most badass relationship, because you're so complete with yourself, and I'll see you through it.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys. If you have gotten value out of this, then please share. Please jump over and follow Nima. Share this with anyone in your life that may be going through some similar challenges. Nima is going to be joining us regularly. So if you have specific things that you're feeling challenged with, then let us know, because we'll be inspired by the topics that you guys bring up. So
or ask, or go ahead and ask if they haven't. I have that training. If they haven't watched it, I'll give you the link right there. If anybody has you want to watch more training on the 5 shifts that I take people through, just enter your email at the bottom of the link and watch it. It'll go through the specific trainings for it. And I just love educating people, and those that reach out, when they're ready, when you're ready, you're ready. And so I'm creating actually another smaller program than the one that I have, like a 6-week challenge for those who it's coming up. So with your permission, within the next few weeks, I'll talk to you about it. If your tribe is really interested, it's called the Intimacy Accelerator, and it's a 6-week deep dive with group calls, group coaching, and modules to help guide you, and meditations to help guide you into healing and reparenting that inner child, that we all have a community of self-healers. If you're in, please say I'm in and message me privately, and then we can get you on a call and see if you're, you qualify, you want to be part of that. It's way more affordable than my upper level programs are. That was kind of the feedback that you gave me, Kira. You're like, how can I get more of my girls into this? More of my empowered women babes into this. Okay, great, sure. So we kind of sat down, we wrote out the specifics of need that we need, and so a 6-week kind of challenge for those that are ready to up level. I would love to help those people, so I'm going to create that, and just message me and see if we can get you on the list.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you again next week, and I hope everyone has an incredible day. Thank you so much for your time, Nima.
Big love to all of you.
Bye, everyone.